You're watching Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi. Today, in the run-up to the June 6th Lieutenant General meeting between India and China, we're looking at decoding the standoff between the two countries. Joining us from Jaipur is Lieutenant General Susheel Gupta. He was the Deputy Chief of Army Staff. He was also PDS for the 14 Corps, and also from the capital is Nitin Gokhale, the founder and editor-in-chief of StratNews Global and BharatShakti. Welcome to both of you. A lot of questions I presume will be answered on this show. General, just coming to you, when you try to explain what's happening to a layman in terms of the sequencing of how India and China try and resolve these kind of standoffs from the lowest level, which is the banner drills, to now Lieutenant Generals meeting. The sequencing of that, isn't it really quite important that it's gone up to the level of Lieutenant Generals, because they would have tried to sort it out at the local level in the beginning?
Well, to resolve local issues at each sectoral level, they have a thing known as the flag meeting at periodical intervals. These are held at the border posts, and they are held in there are border huts made out there where both the sides get together and they discuss local issues regarding border management. So generally, periodically, they discuss maybe once a month, once in 3 months, whatever they decide. And in this particular case, possibly the things have gone out of hand at the local level, and hence they've decided to scale up these talks to the ranks of Lieutenant General.
Nitin, scaling it up to the ranks of Lieutenant General now, how significant is that, and what really can we expect from both sides? What are both sides expecting from the meeting?
Well, from what we know, that from the Indian side, the single point agenda is to restore status quo ante at the area between Finger 4 and Finger 8 on the north bank of Pangangso, because that's where the Chinese have tried to disturb the status quo. As you can see on this map, that is where the disputed area is, because the perception of the LAC differs on either side. And in that, the map, it's very clearly shown that India used to patrol or is normally patrolling up to Finger 8, and the Chinese come up to Finger 4. But now that the Chinese are trying to block the Indians for the last month and a half or so, the Indians want that block to be lifted, and that's their single point agenda. The other two so-called hotspots are not really hotspots, which I'll explain as we go along, but that's the single point agenda from the Indian side. I think at this talks tomorrow on Saturday, the main focus will be for both sides to agree on sequencing of the restoration of status quo, which will then be taken to the higher level at the political and the diplomatic level, and then final solution will be found maybe in the next 10-15 days. That's the sequence I see it really.
General, in your experience now, when you look at the Darbuk Shaya Daulat Beg Oldie whole stretch, can you explain why it's so significant for us?
Well, you must understand with the topography of it, that the area north of Galwan, right up till the Karakoram Pass, is an area which is called the subsector north. And the subsector north encompasses a bit of a flat area, which is called the Depsang Plains. Now, these Depsang Plains are areas where you do not require a motorable road as such. You can generally drive all over the place. There you can see they look like plains.
Yeah.
On the western side of these plains is the high hill feature, which is the Saser Ridge. Now, the Saser Ridge goes down into the Nubra Valley towards the west. And the Nubra Valley is the place through which are lines of communication for the Siachen Glaciers pass. Now, the strategic importance is well known that in case the Chinese occupy the Depsang Plains right up in the Saserla range and the Nubra Valley, apparently it would be able to cut lines of communication going towards the Siachen Glacier, and thereby making it impossible for us to hold the Northern Glacier and and the Central Glacier. So that is why the subsector north is a very important piece of land which we have to operationally hold under all circumstances.
Subsector North, Nitin, you're already getting in questions. Do you think the PLA is provoking the Indian Army just to judge our operational preparedness, and then the PLA may use this information for planning a major operational war later on? That's from 16 heavy duty. But the SSN, and you also want to explain to us what exactly happened in Galwan and what do we look forward to? What's the position currently?
Yes, in fact, most of the concentration of reporting and analysis has been about the Pangangso and the finger areas for such a long time now. But I've been trying to get some details of from the ground on what happened exactly at Galwan and beyond or near Hot Spring. So what I've gathered now and I can now share with everyone here is that on May 5th, when Indian Army's reconnaissance flights were in operation in that Depsang and DBO plains, on their return towards the southern part of that road, the DS-DBO road, they noticed some vehicles coming into the Galwan Valley on the Chinese side of the LAC, not crossing the LAC, but in the Chinese areas or the areas controlled by China. And then the alarm was raised, or I think the information was passed to the relevant authorities. And as they started bringing in some vehicles and some more troops on the Galwan side, or their Galwan post on their side, India also brought in some strength from its brigade in DBO or in the Depsang Plains, which has been there for now last 5 years. So they started building. So on both sides of the LAC, much in depth, about a kilometer on either side, the build-up happened on both Indian and Chinese side. And then at Petrol Point 14, if we can have that map, maybe that would be easier to explain. At Petrol Point 14, which is in that red dot, the two sides met and spoke about each other's strength being built on either side of the LAC. This map, as you know, Amitabh, is done by an amateur military enthusiast, but a very knowledgeable military enthusiast, Rohit Vats. And he's given us a very clear picture of where the Galwan River and the Shiok River converge. And the road, as you can see, the Darbuk-DBO road, is the strategic road which was completed last year in 2019. Now, the Petrol Point 14, when the two sides met, the Chinese immediately objected to a feeder road coming from that DS Darbuk road towards Petrol Point 14 on the Indian side, that shown in the map there on the west of the red dot there. And they said that you cannot build this road. Now the problem here is that on the Chinese side, they have been building this road from their Galwan post to the Petrol Point 14. For the past 5 years, they have completed about 14 of the 21 kilometers of that stretch, but 7 kilometers still remain. And this is where the Chinese thought that the Indians are going to outrace them in connectivity to the Petrol Point 14, which is an important point in that area. And therefore, they started objecting to India building and trying to slow down Indian advance in terms of resumption of the building of that road. That's where I think the main cause of war as far as the Chinese objection was. But the second point was, of course, to camouflage their real intentions in Pangangso and sort of divert attention or make India do deployments all along the LAC wherever the pinpricks are there. So that's the Chinese strategy that I'll speak about a little later, which Indian military leaders have now assessed. This is a new Chinese strategy of doing these deployments at various places, going forward and then withdrawing later. But General Gupta will be able to tell us a little more, I think, of that area.
Yeah, General Gupta, you were talking about the strategic importance of this area, or why are the Chinese so riled up with this area?
Well, you see, especially in the region of Galwan, there has never been a dispute. In fact, I have never heard of any dispute. The last dispute we had was a very serious fight was held there in 1962. And subsequently, the Chinese as such have never come across our side of the LAC in that region. So I really do not understand. Now, one can only make an intelligent guess that possibly because of our road that we have completed from Shok right up to DBO, that has certainly irked them a lot, because this has given us the capability of very fast induction of troops in that region of the subsector north. And now let me just tell you that earlier on, the induction into the subsector north was only either through the aerial route at the DBO, the ALG at the DBO, which was very, very limited, or one had to walk for 3 days from the Nibra Valley via Sasoma across the Saserla Pass, which will take 3 days for the troops to move in. Now, certainly, with this particular road having come in, the Chinese have understood that we are in a position to deploy troops much faster in the particular region. And secondly, I personally feel that the Chinese are certainly irked with the whole world getting against them. And they certainly are not wanting India also to join up the bandwagon and go against them, especially when they start saying that both their leaders have had an agreement. They will not go towards confrontation, but work towards more of mutual support to each other. So possibly just to send a message to us that we should not join up with the others, they may be showing some strength out there just to say, look, you watch out.
We've seen those messages, Nitin, even come out after the virtual meeting that Scott Morrison had with Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well. But interesting points that you were bringing up in your last answer when you were talking about the Chinese strategy. Now, are they looking at opening up various pressure points and looking at it longer term in terms of once they get to the stage where they are getting at on June 6th, say, when they're trying to negotiate, and then giving in to something that they can, but actually trying to hold on at some other pressure point?
Well, that's exactly the point I was trying to make, that they have adopted this new strategy since 2012-13, that they open up different fronts at various small fronts actually by making some ingress in Sikkim, sometime in Arunachal Pradesh, maybe simultaneously in Ladakh. The Pinpricks, they start doing that, say at three or four places. But their real objective is camouflaged in this 3 or 4 ingresses that they make, or the intrusions that they try and do. In this episode, the assessment from what I've after speaking to different people, the assessment is that they came into Galwan. They tried to come into Galwan or near Galwan LAC at Hot Spring. Then they did something in Nakula in Sikkim. But their real intention, their real objective was to secure a base or have a permanent presence in the area between Finger 4 and Finger 8 at Pangangsu. So they appear, and after doing this, after a month or so, they start behaving normally. They sort of appear reasonable in their negotiations, and then they'll say, okay, we'll withdraw from 3 of these 4 places and appear to the world that they're reasonable. But actually, they have achieved what they wanted, and this is what India has caught on to. And therefore, in Saturday's talks, India is not so concerned about their build-up on their side of the LAC at Galwan or Hot Springs or wherever they have come for the first time in so many years. But India is going to concentrate on the more contentious issue, or the more disputed area, and that is the Finger 4, Finger 8 area where they have come and sat. And that's something that India has caught on. And the second stage, the assessment is that the Chinese will keep doing this a number of times and tire out Indian deployments, getting India to deploy additional troops, moving them from the plains up there, acclimatize them, kind of do a battle of attrition and in the mind. But I think Indians have caught on, and maybe that's the way the negotiations will pan out on Saturday. But General Gupta will have more thoughts on this, I think.
General Gupta, especially your experiences which you have in Bangkok, so is that something that you see a strategy that the Chinese have been building up? This is one area where they really want to see gains.
You see, that area of Pangongsu, the Finger areas, that has been perennially a point where the standoff has always taken place. And it is not only the Fingers area, south of the Fingers, the Pangongsu Lake. And if you draw a line through the Fingers 4 through the Pangongsu Lake, and you draw a line through the Finger 8, there's a bit of an area between the Pangongsu, which is also an area that is disputed. Now, what used to happen was, earlier times, it was more of the patrols by boats. Whenever our boats went into that area, their boats would try and push us out. When their boats came in, we would try and push them out. And in fact, that used to be a great battle, And unfortunately, at times, their boats used to outsmart us because of their speed. So finally, we did also procure some high-speed boats so we could match up with them. So this was the thing that used to continue. And as far as the patrols going ahead from Finger 4 towards Finger 8, this was an activity which was continued throughout. And our patrols always went up to our claim lines. And similarly, since as per them, their claim lines up to Finger 4, so their patrols also came up to Finger 4. Unfortunately, there used to be a face-off whenever the timings of both the patrols were clashing. So this face-off has continued, and you rightly said that possibly they want to dominate right up till Finger 4, and that is why they're insisting on coming up and establishing camps ahead, so that they do not permit our patrols to go up to Finger 8, and thereby ensuring that they have the total control of the area between Finger 4 and Finger 8.
Nitin, that's exactly what you've been pointing out over the last few days and weeks, in fact. And you got that interview with Colonel S. Dini, who was commanding officer there, and he had given those maps that we are using there. So again, just explain to us the Finger 4 to Finger 8, the divergence in the perception of the LAC that India has and China has. And as General Gupta is pointing out, it's something that has been continuing. So this is not something new. And again, the face-offs happen when the patrols meet, as he's pointing out.
That's right. In fact, if we look at that map again and the other detailed map that Colonel Dini had given us, if you look at the base that is shown in blue, which is where our base is, and then from the base, if we get that dotted line to Finger 4, this is where this map Colonel Dini had given us. Our patrol, Indian patrol, has to walk up the narrow ledge, which maybe that photograph, if it's available with us, can be shown. That narrow ledge actually sort of brings the Indian patrol to Finger 5. And they used to go then up to Finger 8. And sometimes the patrols came together. But if we go back to the previous map, this map, and if you can see the purple lines, which is indicated by the yellow marker, LAC, China perception. Chinese perception of the LAC up the north bank of Pengang So is at Finger 4. And Indian perception of the LAC, the line of actual control, is at Finger 8, shown in blue, indicated in blue there, and then it sort of goes down into the Pengang So Lake itself. So that has been the area of contention, and General Gupta was the founding Brigadier General Staff of 14 Corps in 1999. So this is not something that has happened for the first time. Standoffs used to happen. Now with heightened transparency of the battlefield, transparency of information, these things are coming out and are now getting sort of taken to higher levels. And that is why we are seeing all this. So something that will be solved through negotiations, I think, short of physical fights that have happened there before. This time they have happened in a little more serious way, but there is no invasion or there is no taking over Indian land in that area, as has been made out in many cases, really. But I mean, that's the way it has been.
Nitin, even those uncorroborated video that had come out of the Chinese vehicle there, some reports suggesting that it was well inside Finger 4. Now, like we're pointing out in those maps there, it's impossible for a vehicle to really get through there because it's such a narrow ledge and people can only walk through there on single file, like we're seeing in that picture, right?
You can see in that picture that there's no road there. Even the foot patrols who go have to walk in a single file and be very careful when they're walking. So those vehicles never came to Finger 4. Those vehicles came up to Finger 5, and we saw that Humvee kind of a vehicle which the Chinese abandoned during this current standoff and ran away when the strength of the Indian forces arrived there. So this is like a kind of a Noora Kushti, as they say in Hindi, and General Susheel Gupta will know what I'm talking about. But no, this was serious this time. But I think negotiation is beginning tomorrow. Of course, the groundwork has been laid at various levels, the brigadier level, then the major general level. But the lieutenant generals will have a little more details to talk about. Maybe General Gupta will be able to.
Let me, in fact, just mention one of our viewers, Gaurav Singh, who's gone into super chat with us, and he was asking, in fact, the question that you just answered about the vehicles not being able to move beyond Finger 4, mentioning Gaurav Singh there, and also you answered some other questions about the Lieutenant General meet. But General Gupta, again, the difficulty of deploying troops there. It wouldn't have changed, even though, like, when you're talking about oldie there, you're talking about vehicles, a road, even the highest landing strip. But tell us a little bit more about the difficulties there with the terrain, with the topography.
Well, about the DBO, you want to know about the Gapsham or DBO area?
Okay. Yeah, the DBO area, sir.
Yeah, it's like this. This area, if you see the road which goes from Shok to DBO, which has been made now, it virtually goes towards the eastern periphery of this particular region. Now, the complete area of the subsector north lies virtually toward the east of it. Now, the area initially near DBO and near track junction is an area which is a flat area, absolute, and that's why it's called the Depsang Plains. And subsequently, it rises to the Saser Ridge, and there's a Saserla Pass. The Saser Ridge overlooks the area of the Nubra Valley. And the significance of the Nubra Valley I brought out last time as to how important it is. I must also tell you that an attempt in the 80s was made to link up a road from the Nubra Valley, from the area of Sasoma, Panamik and Sasoma, along and toward the Saserla Pass, and then going on to the Depsang Plains. Unfortunately, having tried that for 10, 15 years, finally wanted to give up because the impossibility of making the road across the Saserla Pass. We, I think, kept on with it for about 15, 20 years, and then gave it up for the road, finally from Darbuk via Shok and on to DBO. But what I'm trying to say is that getting into this area of SSN was a very, very difficult task. And certainly whatever troops that could be inducted had to be in sufficient numbers to ensure that they could take on anything which the Chinese could build up. Now, fortunately today, with the road having been made from Shok via Butse and via towards Track Junction and DBO, now this road gives us a great opportunity to build up troops at short notice and get in there at a very, very fast pace. I think this has really changed the dynamics of the area, and it is certainly going to be prove very, very important for the defense of this particular region.
Nitin, as you've been pointing out over the last few days, the parity between the two countries has moved, not only in terms of military equipment, but in terms of infrastructure development in the area. And that's one of the reasons why the Chinese are possibly trying to explore so many pressure points.
Of course they are, because they had a head start for 15 years almost, from the late 1990s till about 2010-11. The Chinese built furiously in Tibet, infrastructure, military, civil, dual infrastructure, while we were slow at taking up those that work. And of course, the terrain's difficulty on our side of the Karakoram range and the Kunlun range is far more difficult, as General Gupta has pointed out, that we tried to build that road over the Saserla Pass for 15 years and we couldn't do it. So then they took up this new alignment of DBO, Shiok-DBO road. Even there, at a particular point, the Shiok River used to wash away a portion of the road because it's so fast flowing and in summertime. So they had to finally do another alignment to build a bridge at a particular point, which has made that road now usable for the military use, because there's no other population inhabited in that area beyond the Shiok village. So I think we are catching up, and that's what the Chinese don't like. They don't like us building, and because we are caught up and our troops are able to go farther near the LAC, much closer to the LAC, more frequent face-offs are happening. Earlier, perhaps, and General Gupta will be able to tell us, during his time in 14 Corps, maybe our patrols never even reached there. So even if the Chinese had come and gone, we didn't even know whether they had come and gone, except for telltale signs that they had left behind. But we are better off now than before, and therefore these clashes that are happening.
Is that true, General?
No, what I was trying to say was that in the Galwan region, there was never been a face-off as such. Because as Nitin rightly brought out, the patrolling, we carried out patrols up to our LAC at our own timings. They did it up to their own LAC up to their timings. Now, only as far as the northern areas are concerned, the area of Track Junction, closer to DBO, that is where a large number of face-offs used to take place. As I told you, that's a plain area. They have built roads out there also. And invariably, when we went down there, you would find big marks there that you're entering Chinese territory. They would leave telltale signs like cigarettes and tins and etc., saying that this is our territory. Similarly, our boys would go across and leave telltale signs again there. So this thing continued. We would go up till the perception of our LAC. They would come up to the perception of their LAC. But there was never there would be a face-off, a very quiet face-off, and the patrols would stay there for some time and then disengage and go back. This has been the normal frequency there in the area of track junction closer to DPO.
Nitin, the importance of the officer in command on the ground when these face-offs tend to get emotional and out of hand, that has to be brought out.
Of course, in fact, our junior leadership, and again, I will leave it to General Gupta to tell us, but having sort of worked and reported on the Indian Army and so closely, I can vouch for this, that the junior leadership is very calm, very collected, and very correct in its approach when it comes to these face-offs, because the drills are very well practiced. Even the Jawans, the soldiers, know exactly what they need to do. And that's exactly what I'm saying, that the discipline displayed even in the face of provocation or physical fights that happen in these areas is tremendous. I mean, especially for soldiers who can go, berserk because they have arms. Of course, we don't carry, I think the patrols don't carry arms at some level or at some point. But certainly the patience and the tolerance and the restraint shown by the junior leadership is something that we all should be proud about. And I think that's the strength that we have as far as these distant areas are concerned.
General Gupta, your comment, in the light of the fact that not a shot has been fired since 1976.
You see, the rules of engagement are very clear. The people are thoroughly briefed. And the mechanism of the flag meetings being held periodically, to a very great extent where these rules of engagements are decided, where each side decides that you are not going to unnecessarily escalate a situation. The briefing of the young commanders, the leaders, the NCOs are so thorough, they exactly know as to what action they got to take in a particular situation. They're briefed accordingly, practice accordingly, and they behave accordingly. So we have never had a problem, as you rightly said, where bullets have been fired in anger in those particular regions, anytime.
Nitin, again, with all this confusion, with everybody becoming an expert, having an opinion on the subject, could the Defense Ministry have probably handled it better in terms of information, even if it wasn't to the public, since it's such a complicated matter? Maybe brief defense reporters about it, and so that then the picture could go out. There is that perception that the government has been holding back on information, and hence this fueling of rumors, speculation, opinions, analysis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, in fact, that has been a major problem as far as India is concerned, and when it comes to the Chinese face-offs. There are two reasons for this, Amitabh. One is, of course, that very few of us have actually seen the ground physically, or the deployment and the border areas with China physically. Very few. And then it's very complicated to explain. It's only now that we are getting all these tools to draw the maps and have people who are now willing to speak. Earlier, all this wasn't there, and the government feels that sort of giving out information or running commentary during ongoing crisis is actually counterproductive. And I mean, I'm not holding any brief for the government because all governments have done this during their tenures. So it's not a particular government or a particular party which is doing it. It's the standard practice that during a crisis, an ongoing or a running commentary just does not help. It's not conducive for negotiations. So I don't blame the governments. What could be done possibly before and after the crisis is that background briefings are more frequent for specialist reporters so that they understand, maybe some familiarization trips to those areas which used to happen earlier. Would be one solution, so that informed reporting is happening. Most of the analysis that is happening, I have nothing to say except the fact that today opinions laced with bias and particular political ideologies are being passed off as analogy or analysis, and that's not something similar. I mean, there is a commentary and there is an opinion, but that's not exactly the same as analysis. And that's where I think it's got mixed up in today's proliferation of information platforms and ease of transmitting information. But we have to live with it. We can't really help because those opinions and other things will keep coming.
General, let me just put some questions to you that are coming in from viewers. Siddharth Kumar asks, what chips are the PLA holding with respect to tomorrow's military talks, and what do we have to confront those? If you want to take that one, while I look for some more.
Could you please say that again? I missed out on the audio.
What are the chips that the PLA holds in the talks, the Lieutenant General talks that are level talks that will be held on the 6th, and how should we be confronting China to protect our interests?
You see, I am personally the opinion that they would bring out issues related to the kind of face-off that they have had. They'll try and prove that the Indian troops had come into their areas, the Indian troops had tried to fist fight with their own troops, and therefore Indians should pull back and go back, whatever is the Chinese perception of the LAC. This is going to be the basic thing. And obviously, our side will also bring out their own point of view, bringing out that they have been always going up to their position, the LAC, and they have never had any problems or any face-off. Why is it that suddenly there's been such amount of militancy being shown by all people concerned? And I'm sure they will work out certain mechanisms to ensure that such things are taken care of.
Nitin, is this even physically possible? Aniket 0608 asks, I'd like to know about the speculation, and he's using the word speculation already, of the PLA capturing peaks between Finger 4 and Finger 8.
Well, no, I don't know whether it's speculation or pure fiction, but the peaks, I mean, again, I'll defer to the military knowledge of General Gupta, but sustaining troops on the spurs or living there is going to be impossible, especially in the light of the fact that from the southern bank or even from Finger 4 and Finger 5, India will have a clear view of where these people are. So what advantage do they get sitting on those peaks? I really don't know, but I will leave it to General Gupta to tell us.
General Gupta?
No, yeah, the issue is that certainly if you dominate the top heights of the fingers, you would be dominating those areas. But unfortunately, those heights are so inhospitable that to go and sit there permanently is a very difficult proposition unless they have built some habitat there, built some bunkers there, built some positions there. And in case they start doing that, we will get to know very much in advance. So I don't think that without making any such preparations, the people will go and occupy the heights on top of the fingers. That's a bit of a far-fetched idea.
Again, this is probably a question that we won't be able to answer. Vineet Madan saying, do you believe that at the political level, a decision has already been taken in both countries and that the June 6th military level talks is only to formalize the same? Nitin?
Well, you never know. See, we know that when big time negotiations or higher level negotiations happen, the mandarins, the bureaucrats, and the military leaders have already actually worked out the solution. But that will be at a political level. At this level, I think at the Lieutenant General level, which is unprecedented in any case, I think the roadmap will have to be laid. They'll have to figure out whether they need a little tweaking of the mechanism that exists, various mechanisms that exist on border negotiations. All that will be discussed perhaps, but I don't think the solution is coming so quickly. Don't pin too many hopes on tomorrow's talk giving you a final solution.
So briefly, Nitin, are you saying that it's a long, hot summer ahead, at least in terms of the India-China standoff?
Well, certainly it looks like that because, as I mentioned, there are various reasons. General Gupta mentioned that he wants to send a message to India. The Chinese want to tell us that keep away from building alliances against them. That could be one. There will be local reasons for trying to come in these areas where they have not come in before. But all that combined, certainly India has to keep its vigil up through the summer and through the winter as well. But certainly it is something that the leadership will be watching, and we can only come and discuss like this through various means of communication that we have.
Lieutenant General Susheel Gupta and Nitin Gokhale, thanks so much for joining us on Talking Point. There are lots of questions that I can see that are coming that we haven't got answered, but possibly, like you're saying, if this is going to continue, we probably have more shows like that. We thank everyone for joining us, whether it's on YouTube, on Twitter, or on StratNews Global. You can log on to our website, stratnewsglobal.com, to get all the latest news and analysis from around the world from an Indian perspective. Do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and also get subscriptions or notifications for the latest videos like this when we put them up live on YouTube. That's it on Talking Point. I'm Amitabh Revi.
Thank you, Amitabh.
Thank you. Thank you, Amitabh.